when Meghan Markle first burst onto the royal scene, the world didn't just notice. People celebrated. Think about it. The Hollywood actress marrying the cheeky prince who everyone thought would never settle down. It was like something pulled straight out of a Netflix script. Glamour, romance, a promise of modernization for an institution that was starting to feel like it belonged in a museum. Crowds lined the streets. Cameras couldn't get enough. Even critics were forced to admit it looked like a new chapter for the monarchy. But here's the catch. Fairy tales have a habit of falling apart once the curtain drops, and Meghan's transformation from celebrated duchess to self-declared victim has become one of the most polarizing sagas of our time. Not because the story was tragic, but because the script was so calculated. Now, before we unpack how the narrative flipped, do me a favour. Tap that like button if you've already noticed the cracks in Meghan's victimhood story, because by the end of this video, you're going to see how every single beat was orchestrated. Let's be blunt. The downfall didn't begin with racism headlines. It didn't even begin with the British press, despite what Meghan and her PR machine like to claim. No, the shift started when the public caught on to something else entirely. Entitlement, a subtle arrogance wrapped in a social justice bow. The very same woman who married into one of the most privileged families in the world started painting herself as a casualty of oppression. Enter the Oprah interview. 2 hours of dramatic pauses, tears, and vague accusations that detonated like a bomb across global media. That broadcast wasn't journalism. It was a masterclass in performance. And let's talk about Oprah for a second. The Oprah people grew up with was the queen of accountability. Her empire was built on resilience, ownership, empowerment. She made a career challenging her guests to rise above excuses. But somewhere along the line, that brand of empowerment was swapped for something else. Grievance theatre. Instead of interrogating narratives, she now elevates them. And Meghan's interview. That wasn't about clarity. That was about spectacle. It was therapy for the cameras, staged as primetime television. Notice how carefully it was timed. Notice how vague the details were. Notice how the most explosive claim about the so-called concern over Archie's skin tone was dropped without a name, without context, and with no follow-up. It was the spark that lit a cultural inferno, and Oprah let it burn without so much as a challenge. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Because while mainstream outlets nodded along like obedient courtiers, one voice, love him or hate him, wasn't afraid to call it out. Charlie Kirk. Say what you will about Kirk, but he saw through the glitter. While everyone else was fumbling over how to frame the accusations, Kirk went straight for the jugular. His take? Meghan wasn't chased out. She walked out, with millions in her pocket, brand deals lined up, and Netflix on speed dial. It wasn't exile, it was business. And he wasn't wrong. Look at the pattern. Rejection of royal protocol, disdain for tradition, constant press manipulation, and a superiority complex thinly disguised as progressive activism. The public caught on. They weren't seeing a brave reformer. They were seeing a skilled manipulator. And Kirk was one of the few willing to say it without flinching. Of course, he paid the price. The labels came flying. Dangerous, hateful, racist. Not because his words were false, but because they were inconvenient. That's how this game works. If you puncture the narrative, you don't get rebuttals. You get erasure. Meanwhile, Meghan played her role with precision. She knew exactly when to tear up, exactly when to pause dramatically, exactly how to frame herself as the misunderstood outsider battling the oppressive monarchy. And Harry? Harry looked less like a husband and more like a prop. The cheeky, rebellious prince people adored seemed hollow, dulled down, almost robotic. A man who traded his independence for a California mansion and a podcast contract. And yet, this is the part that should make you raise your eyebrows. The palace never fully cut ties. Their faces remain on the official website. Harry's engagements still get publicised. Meghan lurks on the periphery, but the machine hasn't scrubbed them out. If anything, there's a slow, calculated reintegration happening right under our noses. Ask yourself, why? Because this isn't just about family reconciliation. It's about optics. It's about narrative control. It's about institutions so terrified of being branded out of touch, racist, or cruel that they will quietly re-embrace the very people who torch their reputation on live television. That's not reconciliation. That's surrender. And it gets darker. While Meghan and Harry are slowly being woven back into the fabric of royal PR, William and Catherine, the only two who still embody stability, are being sidelined. Fewer headlines, fewer appearances, less spotlight. Why? Because they're boring. They represent dignity, duty, and consistency. Qualities that don't trend. Qualities that don't sell. Drama sells. Victimhood sells. Rebellion sells. And Meghan embodies all three. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Meghan's story isn't about bravery. It's about opportunism. She wants privacy, but only if it comes with cameras. She wants justice, but only if it means never being questioned. She wants respect, but only if it doesn't require showing any in return. And the enablers? They're just as complicit. Oprah with her softball questions, Netflix with its glossy documentaries, media outlets parroting headlines about racism without a shred of evidence. Each one played a role in building the illusion that Meghan Markle was the oppressed duchess fighting for justice, when, in reality, she was executing a brand pivot. That's what rattles people the most. Not Meghan's claims, but the ease with which powerful figures lined up to validate them without receipts. It's one thing for a celebrity to play the victim. It's another for global institutions to hand her the stage and silence anyone who dares to question it. Charlie Kirk became a punching bag because he refused to clap for the performance. He called it what it was, a grift wrapped in identity politics. And in today's climate, that's enough to get you branded a heretic. Not because you're wrong, but because you're inconvenient. And Harry? He's the tragic subplot. Once the fun-loving prince, now the hollow figurehead of Meghan's crusade. Watch his body language. Watch his interviews. He doesn't look empowered. He looks broken. That's not partnership. That's puppetry. So, where does this leave us? A monarchy too scared to defend itself. A media too compliant to ask questions. And a culture too addicted to outrage to see through the performance. Meghan has become the perfect heroine for an age that worships grievance. She's royalty meets rebellion, victimhood meets luxury. It's Netflix ready, Oprah approved, and social media tested. But let's not kid ourselves. It's also fiction. And here's where I'll leave it. When history looks back on this saga, it won't remember Meghan as the courageous outsider who reformed the monarchy. It will remember her as the woman who weaponized identity, exploited victimhood, and cashed in on outrage. And it will remember the institutions that let her do it. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a royal story. It's a cultural story. It's about what kind of narratives we reward, who we choose to believe without question, and how easily truth gets trampled when it's inconvenient. So, let me throw it to you. Do you think Meghan Markle is the misunderstood heroine her supporters claim? Or do you see through the script? Drop your thoughts below. I'll be diving into your comments. And if you're tired of the media spin and want more unfiltered breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started.